Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today we're joined by Kyle Kroeger. Kyle has been building websites for almost 10 years now. He does it on the side of his day job. He's in investment banking, and he's been very successful in building up websites over the past decade or so. Kyle is just like so many of us. He sat down one day and searched for how to make money online and started learning all about it. One of the first sites he started after a couple of failures, he ended up growing over 18 months and then going on to sell it. And that gave him the impetus to start the site that we focused on today. It was a recent success of his that he just sold. This site was in the personal finance space, so a very competitive space, and he quickly got that up to several 100,000 page views per month. And the site was making 5 figures per month when he sold it pretty recently. This allowed him to leave his day job, where he now is full-time at building websites. And he has a portfolio of 9 sites currently. So we dive into the details of his portfolio as it is today. He is kind enough to share 2 of his sites with us. And so we get the URLs, we can go check those out and see some of the details about how he's building his websites. We spent a good amount of time talking about the fact that he tends to always get really rapid growth out of the gate. He has many websites he's built up where he has 100,000 or more page views a month within that first 12 to 18 month time period. So we talk about what he's doing to get that many page views almost out of the gate. He also shares some really unique approaches or unique ways to build links. He's building links in a way that really maybe goes against some of the more standard link building tactics. And I think you'll enjoy hearing about those. And we spent some time talking about Kyle going all in on his website and just what comes from really putting so much more into your website than just the bare minimum. All in all, great interview. Really great to hear a story like this with someone who has been building websites for a long time on the side and achieved so much success. There's a lot of inspiration there. Hope you enjoy. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we are joined by Kyle Kroeger. Kyle, how you doing?
Good.
Welcome. Where are you joining us from today?
The new basement office at my house.
Nice.
Yeah, making the transition into my own space here. I like to call it the dungeon. It still has plenty of work to be done to get some decorations on the wall, as you clearly can see. It's a bit of a bunker at the moment, but
more of a bunker than a basement, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, you have the advantage. I'm right next to the kitchen here in my home, so you never know when some kid might wander through. And we do a pretty good job, though. But yeah, the basement sounds awfully nice, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited that you're joining us today. You have a fantastic story that I think a lot of people in the audience are going to enjoy hearing about. You have a background in investment banking and private equity, which is kind of your day job, but you're a website builder, and not just, a part-time website builder. I would say, like, you've built some really successful websites, had a couple of website exits, and are currently working on a portfolio of sites now. So I don't want to bury the lead, but catch us up to your background, maybe outside of websites first, and in your private equity background, and then we'll kind of transition into hearing more about your portfolio of sites.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks. Ton for having me on. Actually, a long time coming, and sort of an honor, really. Back in 2012, 2011, I was graduating college from Purdue University, and I was looking up, ways to make money online, passive income. I came across this guy, Spencer, right? Niche Pursuits, and became, completely enamored with everything he was doing. So obsessed. I was, subscribing to his feed, reading all of his blog posts, really just kind of enamored with the whole sort of online world and way to make sort of money on your own terms. And that was, my first year out of college, and, I was working in Chicago in investment banking, and, knew that I couldn't work under the fluorescent lights for the rest of my life, right? So that actually, reading a lot of Spencer's stuff kind of made me excited to tinker with a number of different things, right? I think at the time I started a Stock Twits Twitter account to kind of share all of my opinions and sort of short mini blogs about stock trades to make or options trades to make. that account sort of did well, and I kind of transitioned to starting my first blog on the side where I'd write up valuations of different stocks. And so that was the first foray into sort of testing the online world. I realized quickly though that I was kind of doing it wrong. It was a blogspot type website. I couldn't really own my own income from it, and I got burnt out between doing that and working 80-hour weeks. I just knew that wasn't sustainable. And so life went on. I kind of put some of the entrepreneurial efforts to the side. I had tinkered with creating a couple different apps and things like that on the side when I was living in Chicago and first moved back to my hometown in Minneapolis. But beyond that, I started getting back into just solely focusing on my professional career. I landed a corporate development job investing in renewable energy here in Minnesota, and then wanted to go into the private investing space and landed a job in private equity, investing in sustainable infrastructure across the US.
You have quite a background in finance, in banking, in some of these things that might lend themselves pretty well to building websites. Do you think any of that background helped you as you kind of started building websites? Obviously, you kind of delved into a couple different things, Twitter and the whatnot, like you went through. But it sounds like some of your background probably had an influence on how you built websites and probably what led to some of their success.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think when I first started out in investment banking, right, you work long hours, you work on a ton of different things, right? You're not just working on a pitch deck, but one day you're getting a call from a CFO to do a special project on something they need help with in Excel, which, could include thousands of, journal entries or, orders in a CSV file that needs to be completely, digested into like results that can be, you can have something that you learn that you can position the business for a sale or an exit and use that data. And so I built this foundation where I, learned a lot of different, Excel kind of modeling techniques. And I've been able to parlay that into using data analytics in regards to traffic, keyword research, users, metrics in order to make better decisions with building websites. And so it's been kind of a natural progression. And they're both, complementary in a way, right? And I always knew that, going back into, my younger days, right, I would be the type of person that would read baseball stats nonstop, right? Love the numbers. And so I think I naturally found my home with SEO because of the fact that it's data driven. You can use the data to make better decisions.
Yeah, I was going to say, hearing about lines and lines and lines of Excel code makes me think of keyword research and certainly parsing through a lot of the data you get out of Google Analytics. So yeah, it seems to make a lot of sense. Let's see. So walk us through when you started maybe your first successful website, right? Like I think we all have a history of starting off with some projects that maybe didn't end up going anywhere or didn't end up where we wanted them to, but at some point you were clearly able to progress forward and start a website that really gained traction. When was that happening, and what was the early days of that website?
Yeah, that was back in, call it 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when I first moved back to Minneapolis. I had tested with a lot of different things, thanks to a lot of Spencer's advice. I tested with stuff. I knew I wasn't doing it the right way, and so I kind of put that on pause for a bit, and in Chicago, focused on my finance career. And when I moved back to Minneapolis, I had a moment to be able to kind of get back to the drawing board of my entrepreneurial efforts. I grew up in a family that was, entrepreneurs their entire life. So it's been ingrained in me. And so, getting back here, maybe that was that moment where it clicked to, getting back into that world. So yeah, I definitely, tinker with some stuff when I got back here, and started a very small personal finance and investing oriented website, and built that up. I did a lot of things wrong up front, but over time I did found the things that I was doing wrong, did less of those, and started doing more of the things that you're doing right. And over the course of about 18 months, scaled that site up, and eventually sold it. But then, I got a little burnt out of doing the websites with work, and I landed my, job in private equity and wanted to focus a bit more on, building my finance career. One goal I always had was to end up in a principal investing role. And so, became very focused into that and took a little bit of a break from the whole entrepreneurial, website building space.
You glossed over it quite nicely, but I'm going to go back and hold you to it a bit. You were able to build a site up and get it working to the point where it was able to be sold within 18 months. That's an accomplishment for sure. I mean, getting sites to get to that type of a level, it certainly takes work. You alluded to some of the mistakes. Like, could I ask you, like, what were maybe just some of the bigger mistakes you made in this first site that did end up being a success, I'll point out, but it always helps to hear maybe a couple mistakes you can share with the audience or with people so they might be able to avoid those.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so focusing on things like paid ads or social media, the things that are lower return on investment upfront, right? And then it's not just doing something that's the lower return on investment, it's the opportunity cost. So if you're sitting there working with paid ads or a paid ad strategy that's simply not working, right, or generating a return on your investment that's marginally over your dollar spent, right, 10% return, let's call it. But you have the opportunity cost of something that's like SEO, right? And you're generating 50 to 75 or even 100% return over time. And so focusing in on something that has the highest possible return at time zero, right, at initial onset of the idea, and then slowly migrating and progressing to other channels that help diversify and build your business, build a better foundation for the business or the website. And so that's one thing that I definitely learned. And obviously, some of the naive points of thinking that, oh, if I start a Twitter account, right, like followers are just going to come. I'm going to get, a big following, right? That doesn't happen at all.
I agree.
Yeah. And things like, attempting to try to build a community when you might not know your audience and trying to force something that you don't truly know yet, that can be a bunch of wasted time, right? If you're trying to have somebody convert on a topic that's completely unrelated, or a set of people that don't really care about that conversion event, it's going to be a huge miss. Mm-hmm. And all the effort that you took to get there is going to be largely wasted.
Well, let's catch up to where we're at maybe over the last year or two. I know you have a site that you have gotten to a point where it's doing very well. Can you talk us through that website that you've grown to a good number? Talk us about the starting points on that site and maybe what you've done to grow it where it's at now.
So I worked. I took a bit of a break. Learned a lot from my first effort into building a website. I refocus. I kind of got excited about doing it again, right? I wanted to build something that was the highest return on investment and do it the right way and start fresh where I'm not making those mistakes that I made before, wasted marketing dollars and things like that. And so what I did is I launched a site in the personal finance space that was more geared towards sort of side hustles, making money on your own terms, some of that entrepreneurial online business type content, passive income. I knew I was passionate about that. I was searching it, 10, 12 years ago and reading a lot of that different types of content and building different income streams to help, you achieve financial freedom. And so I knew a lot about the topic. I already had a foundation of passion, right? So what I did is I leveraged a lot of different keyword, research in bulk upfront to build a framework that the site could be built off of before I even really got started, right? Find the opportunities and the gaps in what's not being covered, but then also find the opportunities on what is being covered but could be covered, better. And so, built out that framework up front and addressed the low-hanging fruit type content that was either not written about yet, or the stuff that was out there was just not helpful or not thorough enough. And so then I started there, right, and slowly progressed along the growth curve. And that was another sort of 18-month progression over time.
And so this site today, talk us through the site as it exists right now, and any metrics or numbers you're willing to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one that I'm referring to is I exited just earlier this year after COVID. A couple things that kind of drove that was I knew I wanted to build a foundation for potentially other projects that I was kind of thinking about and working on. And so was able to kind of and coming out of COVID, right? I wanted to build more of that distributed business and kind of work on my own terms, be remote, right? Be location discrete, things like that. And so it's kind of taking some chips off the table by selling. Would be sort of I felt like help me kind of have a foundation to be able to kind of segue into this permanent entrepreneur life, right? And so yeah, they successfully exited that, scaled from sort of 0 to a few 100,000 page views a month in about 18 months, largely through SEO, and then over time use the SEO to capture emails, harvest emails, build an email list, and then migrate your audience to other platforms or channels, whether that's a community or a YouTube channel. Find a way to kind of harvest them into a base where they can kind of keep up to date with all the information beyond just written content and article type content on the site.
So over 100,000 pages a month. And what niche or what space would you say this site is in?
Yeah, this was in personal finance.
Okay, yeah, personal finance.
Hustles. Yep, side hustles and online sort of entrepreneurial efforts, and sort of gig economy jobs as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so you have obviously a good amount of traffic. You're building an email list and then moving them off of from this email list into other platforms, obviously probably other maybe affiliate offers or these kinds of things there. Talk about the way you monetize this site. Was it ad revenue driven? Was it Amazon affiliate? Was it other types of affiliate? Were there other relationships you had built up? Like where was the monetization coming through when it comes to this site?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for my first exit of a site, I 5 years ago or so, I built sort of some relationships in the advertising space for personal finance, but mainly for personal finance and investing. And so one being Mediavine. I loved working with them on that first site. And so for this one that I eventually exited, I made it a goal up front to try to get to Mediavine as fast as possible. And I think I wrote a post about it at one point, but I got there like with my goal under 6 months, and was super happy about that, coming from ground zero to build. And I wanted to do that because when you're building something from scratch, sort of bootstrapped, I know websites in general, you don't have much in terms of operating expense, just server costs and some other tools, email lists, things like that. You still need cash flow. You need to be compensated for your time. Like writing is hard. It's very hard and it's time consuming, and building something that's recurring revenue, like display advertising on the onset, can be extremely helpful for you to navigate different paths, or take that first step to outsource or hire your first writer or somebody that can come in and improve copy, improve the user experience, right? You're not going to be able to do that if you don't have some kind of cash flow that can fund that. I'd rather be funding business cash flow internally to grow and improve the sites than to be doing it out of.
Okay, so you had Mediavine, and were there other monetization channels that you worked with this website?
Yeah, other channels, affiliate networking, affiliate marketing. So some of the impact radius, flex offers, and commission junction. Targeted a few really high value affiliates that that I knew could convert well. Tested out different conversion sort of metrics between all of the affiliate partners to hone in on what was really fitting well with my audience, and sort of, again, on the point, doing more of the good stuff and less of the bad.
One question for you that I'm curious on. Did you find that most of your affiliate revenue would come when people were on the website, or once you move them over to the email list and then you monetize through these email offers? Like, I'm just curious. I think a lot of people consider email, right? They consider doing an email list, and obviously it's going to vary dramatically depending on what niche you're in. But I'm just curious what kind of money your email list would earn you versus maybe the website and the SEO efforts itself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. A majority of it came from the website, actually.
Okay.
I refrained from, I was trying to build a community, as well as I did have a blog course, and it is still out there, a blogging course on a number of different strategies that I've deployed. But I knew the end game was trying to sell some of my own products. And so I didn't market too much to, and provide affiliate offers in the email. I wanted to get them the product, which is content. As a website owner, that when you write content, your content is your product. And so I'm giving them the product. And I wanted to hold them there, keep them interested and engaged, to then also harvest and sell, a premium product, which would be a course.
Right. So roughly speaking, I mean, whatever you're comfortable sharing, even just ballpark numbers, what was the site making when you ended up exiting it per month?
Yeah, annually it was in the six figures, mid to high six figures, double six figures.
Okay.
Kind of in that 150 to 200 range.
Okay, and that's annually, you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah, very good. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
That's you've had several exits now. That's I think we've got a model here for success. I mean, so what the burning question I have on going all the way back to that first site you started, but now we have a clear track record here. Like, I think that pretty much anyone would agree it's a bit unique that you're getting so many page views in such a short period of time. And then you add on the layer that personal finance is known as being a more challenging niche to go into. Out of all of them, certainly you have subject matter expertise, no doubt about it. But maybe if you could, like, why is it that you think so many of us struggled to get that many page views in such a short period of time, and you were able to do it, and you've done it consistently across multiple sites now?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I think honing in up front on the articles that you're going to write, right, and building a content strategy that's going to, it's like a surgeon, right? You gotta cut through the data in terms of in finding the best possible output for your time in the content that you're going to write, the best possible output you'll get in terms of variations of keywords, writing long form content that's going to have the ability to rank for a ton of different stuff. That can be, basically performance for your time. You can maximize the performance of your time by doing so. And so, I deployed a number of different strategies, like, keyword golden ratio to find long tail keywords. That worked a bit, but I found that you can get even better output by targeting things that have multiple variations of ways to say keywords, right? So swap out a different word, right? Top and best, or there's a number of different things, right? Earned versus make. And if you write long form content targeting those stuff, it could be even more, it could be difficult keyword, but you can end up ranking for 2,000 to 4,000 different keywords just from one piece. And that can entrench you, with some, pretty good strength in the search engines.
In your estimation, it's a bit of a loaded question because of your background in personal finance, investment banking, that sort of thing. But I mean, how important was it that you were a subject matter expert on these sites? How important was that to their success?
I think a little bit. I think there's an intersection between passion, what you like doing, and what actually makes money. And so you're not going to be able to, you could go after something that makes money, but you're missing two of the other buckets. There, you need an intersection between all three. And so I had a bit of a passion, personal finances, but more competitive and more lucrative niche. But I also enjoyed just digging through the data of different, keywords and things to talk about on the site. And so that's where I kind of found that. And I think, anybody that's looking for something, don't try to chase one of those three intersections alone. Find something that meets all three. And it doesn't have to be a lucrative niche or a lucrative area. You'll find your path at the end of the day, right?
Yep, that's good feedback. That's and doubling down on that. I mean, you were clearly still had still working full time in investment banking. What sort of, in doing this on the side, what sort of team did you have to grow this personal finance website?
Yeah. At first, I didn't have anyone. I did it all myself, just kind of weekend work. Write those long articles. I think I started by targeting some of the most competitive articles, and I did them. I wrote them all myself because I knew those would be cornerstone pieces. I had that framework. I wanted to target all the cornerstone pieces on my own. Very long form, kind of 5,000, just 6,000 word kind of post, and then build that traffic base and slowly add in an additional writer that could help me and target some of the low-hanging fruit, and then occasionally engage other agencies or even contractors that can come in on just sort of an ad hoc basis. And over that growth curve, slowly get to the point where you have more of a systematic kind of content calendar that you're following. But at the onset, no one, and slowly take your time to get to fold in that one person and test some different things, right? You don't have to be an expert, right away. The best thing about building a blog in particular, you can throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and kind of see what sticks. And you still end up okay.
Well, let me ask you, how many articles did you end up with on that site? I'm just curious, in 18 months, how many articles you and your other team of writers produced?
I think it was a couple hundred.
Okay, so a good number, like a good number, yeah.
Yeah, a couple hundred over 18 months, yeah.
Okay, any link building strategies here? Again, personal finance, very competitive. What were you doing for links?
Yeah, I have this thing of like, the way I'd kind of describe link building is sort of working with people, right? At the end of the day, everyone's people behind, there's people behind every website you see out there. Maybe some people have curated, automation, of course, but there's somebody behind building automation itself too. And so with link building, right, I think of it as finding ways to work with people, interacting with people. So what that entails is some of that old-fashioned hustle, going out, talking to people. You never know, right? There could be even like a financial advisor down the street that has a website, before you know it, you're talking to him and, telling him about, my own website and how there could be some form of collaboration and collaboration translates into links. I think everyone kind of link building, people think about that as that's the end game, but you need to think about what happens to get there, right? Interaction, communication with people, striking a deal with someone. A lot of different things happen to get there. And so I would, as a tip, rather than think about it of, oh, how can I get links? Think about all the things that happen to get to links, right? Don't think about the end of the tunnel. Think about getting through the middle of it. And so, interacting with people, doing guest posts, offering opportunities to get expert advice, put it on my content to improve the content, and then allow them to share it once it's published. Things like that, right? Working with people to make the content better, make the product better, and then making sure it gets into the right hands once it's published.
Smart. Yep. And I imagine that's, even more important to stand out with a different approach, or at least a bit of a unique approach when you're dealing with personal finance, which is a saturated niche and whatnot. So, well, good. Well, again, congratulations on the sale, and let's transition to today. What's going on today? I that was, you said, a couple months back. So, what does Kyle's life look like now when it comes to websites?
Yeah. Lately, it's been a whole bunch of travel, and tinkering with a lot of fun things. Like it feels like I'm in, Willy Wonka's like workshop. I've got end up buying a drone and capturing drone footage and taking different videography of destinations. And so what that entails, right? Running a travel website. This was a side project that, it's been around for about a year now. And a year and a half or so. Hadn't really spent a ton of time on it on its onset, but more recently I've been taking it much more serious. And that's the site called viatravelers.com. It originally started back I think we came up with the idea back in my honeymoon. Via Travelers, we're in Italy, and Via, is this name for street in Italy. And so, Via Travelers, the concept is basically kind of street travelers. So roaming around streets, getting lost kind of on purpose, and seeing where it takes you. Kind of living life with no reservations when you travel. And so just got back from Europe, spending 6 weeks there, capturing a lot of different footage, taking some time off as well, but exploring different cities and using that from the video content to then parlay different articles as well and produce a YouTube channel.
All right. So, and that's the new project there. And it sounds like you started that before you had exited the personal finance blog. And so, were you already thinking ahead about exiting that and ramping that down while you started this up, or, because it sounds like you kind of have this portfolio of sorts that you're building up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I had that waiting in the wings. From one thing I learned from basically my first exit is that you can kind of always have there's not a lot of cost that goes into blogs and websites, right? As long as you're dealing with content as your product, and so you can always have a couple projects waiting in the wings, right? And when they're ready to deserve some attention, you can focus your efforts on that project. And so this one was there. I've always had a passion for traveling, and knew I wanted to spend more time on it eventually. It just wasn't sustainable with so many things going on, and so now is the time to turn more attention to it and have some fun and maybe take a break from personal finance and things like that.
But you've been so successful there.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I can imagine also, the travel niche was particularly affected by COVID. And it sounds like you were starting this up during that. So that could be introduce even more trepidation, because you're wondering, is this growing, or is it growing, but there's just not as much search volume now, and all these kind of things. So that's a tougher niche to start during the kind of the pandemic era, if you will. But it sounds like it's doing really well right now. And again, for those who want to go check it out, it's viatravelers.com. And so, what are your plans for that site going forward? Where is it at right now? In terms of maybe number of articles published, or, page views. You mentioned it's getting quite a bit of traffic and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Good question. So the articles, I've learned a lot with travel, completely different animal than personal finance. I've produced, I think, 2 times as much content as the personal finance site.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And only, not at about 50% of the page views as a personal finance site. So that's been very interesting for me to learn. One thing I've learned, right, with travel, it's very locational. Locational authority is very, very important. There's a lot of people that have had a ton of success just hammering home one area, right?
And for that, by that, you might mean like Italy, for example, like
Yep.
becoming a travel site. And what you're saying is that becoming an expert, say on Italy, is very important in Google's eyes for their ranking for a travel site.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I've learned, especially through the data and even stuff that I'm producing. And I lost sight of that because I always thought of it kind of like personal finance, where you're dealing with informational content.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't really matter what location you're doing it from or searching it from. Right.
Exactly. And so think about when you write a new, content cluster for a new location, that's almost like building a whole new website, right? The effort that's going to need to go just for that cluster to be, have authority is almost like starting a brand new site from scratch. And so at least that's the way I've started to view it for travel. But at the end of the day, I have a massive passion for the places that I've visited. I have a lot of information about the places that I've visited that's genuine, and not necessarily just scraped Flickr photos and pulling together a bunch of other kind of generic descriptions about places. And so that's important to me, and that's one where why I'm doing this is because at the end of the day, if I have passion for travel, I can journal what I'm doing for fun, and potentially it becomes a business. And so that's been a lot of fun for me, just kind of being able to test a lot of different things out and see what happens. It's it's not going to be perfect, but at least I'm taking that step forward. And the way I envision it, right, travel is something that can stimulate all of the senses. And so what's important to me is slowly migrating into something that can convey that message through audio, video, written content, and even kind of feeling that experience.
I'd asked about this earlier, and it related to the personal finance website you had, and it was about expertise. And do you think you need to be an expert to succeed in the project that you're working on? And now we're transitioning to talk about this travel site, and expertise looks different in travel, right? It's not kind of the same level of expertise maybe from Google's angle, but nonetheless, I hear you saying things like, I just got done traveling in Europe for 6 weeks. I just took a ton of video footage and produced a bunch of content. I mean, here we are again, where you're totally immersing yourself, I feel like, in this website. And I don't think a lot of site owners necessarily do that. Maybe talk a bit about why you think that's important and maybe some of the differentiators you think it's creating for you in the websites you build.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings up a thought that I didn't touch on in terms of link building, right? Immersing yourself in the content and producing content in a variety of mediums is important to making sure you can get your content in the right hands, right? So I think of it as like a tree that ends up with branches. You write an article, that's one form, that's written content. That written content contains an infographic or some sort of graphical depiction. That graphical depiction now has, think of all the mediums where people share, images or imagery, right? All over. There's, platforms all over that, specialize in that. Now move down to sort of video, and all the video services. Pulling all of those pieces together into an article, now you have a bunch of different mediums within that article to make that content better and immersing yourself in the elements that are important to make that piece of content, aka your product, that much better and that much better of an experience. So you need to do it to be able to you need to immerse yourself to one, make the content better, but then two, it ends up helping you in terms of promotion and link building authority, and making sure that you're getting the signals across the web that you're the go-to source for that that topic.
So is this the only website you're working on right now? Anything else in your portfolio? This is obviously taking a lot of your effort and energy. You just got back from, I mean, we'll call it 6 weeks of work, although it sounds like pretty good work.
Yep.
But you're definitely working hard on this side. But anything else in your portfolio that you're working on?
Yeah, so I have a handful of other sites. I think up to nine total websites.
9. Okay. Well, yeah, now
Yes.
that is a few more. Yes.
Yeah. And those are more, projects that are sort of waiting in the works. Content and content development, it takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of time for search engines to process what your site is all about. And so, getting some of those in the works now. Those are all sort of side projects, if you will. But another one that I'm super passionate about, and it's tangentially related to a lot of my professional career, and I'm also passionate about it. But that site's called the Impact Investor, and it's going to be a site that's largely focused on ESG investing and sustainability. Basically targeting the concept that bridging the gap between retail investors and their approach to ESG with sort of institutional investing. I feel like there's a massive gap in understanding for people like you and me to, find those companies to invest in that are making a positive, change. And there isn't enough transparency in between the corporate's communications on what they're doing through to the institutional investor and then all the way down to the retail investor. And so I think that whatever I can do to be a voice to cut through that noise and convey a message that can help other people find those companies.
Well, it wouldn't be personal finance, but it does sound like you still are in the investment world a little bit then when it comes to some of your websites.
Yes.
Can't take you too far from that source, I suppose. 9 sites. I mean, where are you at career-wise with your day job? Is this something you're still doing aside, or have you transitioned when it comes to that?
Yeah, this will largely be, coming, into 2022, be, where I'm spending all my time. This is what I'll be doing. I'm excited to take this step for sure. I'm also excited to take the step further from content to more value add stuff as well. I've learned a lot in graduating from content into software, tools, different resources, things that people can use that are just beyond the content itself. And so there's a number of things within these projects that have the ability to do that. There's some that are probably just going to be content only. But they all, at the end of the day, every site that's in the portfolio is something that I'm passionate about, something that I enjoy doing. And some probably aren't in lucrative niches, but that's okay. I'd rather have the fun and the passion than solely focusing on the lucrative side of things.
So you've left your job full time. You're focused on website building, and more than just websites, but actually building, bigger opportunities behind just the content. You sold a handful of sites. I mean, you're truly a success story when you look back on the website building world and all the way where you started in 2011 and 12, like you talked about. But yeah, congratulations. That's wonderful. So good luck to you in your ventures here. I have some other questions, if you don't mind, just about as we kind of get towards the end of our time here, that I'm really curious. I heard you talk about this, and I think a lot of people have some questions maybe around this topic. I want to hear your thoughts on it. You talked about how you have 9 sites in your portfolio, but many of them are just on the side, just getting a little bit of attention. It almost sounds like you bed in starter sites. Almost, I hear this theme where you kind of plan for a year or 2 or 3 down the road to give yourself opportunity and options, and you're always kind of one step ahead. How do you, is that accurate? How do you view these starter sites? Like, do you have a process you go through where you're not ready to work on them yet, but you might want to? So what do you do to kind of start to get them built without putting a lot of your energy into them?
Yeah. Yeah, but it brings up I'll give a good example. One site, one opportunity that kind of came up randomly, just sort of searching the web, and was on, a couple expired domain type listing searches. Found a really good opportunity alongside a handful of other expired domains. And so I bought sort of a 3 to 4 pack within a niche, 3 to 4 pack of expired domains, all of which were former content sites. And then took the one with the best metrics, made that as the master site, and then all of the other 3 consolidated to redirect directly to the master site. But each of those 3 that were kind of directing right to the master were on subtopics that would go under the master. And so not redirecting it to the homepage, but redirecting it to one article that is that subtopic, and building this, ecosystem, if you will, of links right at day 0. I've always wanted to do that. I've heard some good, case studies of doing so, to really kind of already have that foundation, and then only, needing to execute on the content. And so far that's worked out really well. We'll see where it goes. But things like that have a lot of work, still a ton of work to be done. But that's just one thing that kind of, popped into my head. I think other things are, if you do find a passion or something that you see a gap or an opportunity in, don't be hesitant to jump on it, or at least try it. There's nothing worse than just not doing something that you could have just tried.
Yeah, there's always a balance between splitting your focus and taking your eye off of a singular focus versus a bit more along the lines of what you're doing, which is kind of making sure you have some irons in the fire, and that you can be giving yourself options down the road, not only today and tomorrow, but in a year and in 2 years. So it's a healthy balance to consider. So you've been involved in the personal finance spaces on a number of websites, travel spaces. Like, generally speaking, these are competitive niches. And I wanted to ask you your thoughts on what Google calls EAT, or expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness. And is that something that you have, whether by focus or just by nature, put an emphasis on? And do you think it's had an impact on any of your sites growing? Again, because I'm just going to go back to you tend to get really rapid growth pretty quickly, and so I want to see if that had any impact on the way you built sites.
I never intentionally did, a checklist to meet, different EAT criteria, actually. I think it was sort of natural in that I immersed myself into the topic as much as I possibly could. And I was actually doing this I was trying to read up on what people call EAT, in 2021. And because for Via Travelers, because I had been producing so much content, and I'm like, well, what's going on? I mean, I thought I'd be further along than I am now. And so I wanted to revisit it. And a common theme that stuck out to me relative to some, stuff I had been doing prior, I had always had a very nice long form kind of about page that was really in-depth, personal, gave mission statements, purpose, and really focused in on the overarching theme of the site. And so that was embedded in the site alongside all the other, check boxes of, disclosures and writing out long form content, building some of those trust signals with authoritative sites that are highly relevant. I think that's something that's, working with sites that are relevant to your niche is priority number one, in terms of signaling trust. And so those were some themes that came up, but I'm always, I don't intentionally do it because it does seem like it's one area that's a bit of a black box in a way.
For sure, right.
Yeah. So I always read different content about eat, and I end up coming away with no clear actionable items. And so it's more of a holistic thing where I need to think about what I've done in the past and see where I'm not doing it now and try to reinforce it.
Yep. Yeah, it's fair enough. It's certainly a ever evolving and somewhat confusing topic for sure. And yeah, boy, how do you nail that with travel? That's a good question. You've transitioned to having a portfolio of sites. Maybe talk through how you handle 9 sites. Like, do you have a process in terms of how you do that? In terms of where your time and effort goes? What's your team look like now? And what are your future plans? Are you going to continue to expand this? Are we going to talk to you next time? You're going to have 27 sites, or are you going to try to whittle down to 5 sites? What are your plans going forward?
Yeah, I think I would get a lot of grief if I had another site from family and friends, but so I'm going to keep it to this base. They're all in things that I'm passionate about, so I want to keep this foundation and keep this as the ecosystem and the portfolio, if you will. And so the team now really is virtual assistant and a handful of content writers. I finally brought on my first editor. So now really getting first kind of real editor, getting a thorough look on every piece of content that's getting produced, and working with people locally, writers and different people locally, graphic designers locally in my area, to somebody that I can pick up the phone or text with, to make sure that we're getting things done, or making the right edits. And so then beyond that, I found myself getting into a SaaS subscription problem of way too many software tools to kind of like help.
Addicting. They can be addicting.
Yes. Yeah. Those 7-day trials, I tell you. They get you.
They get you. Yeah, they do. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So, but I'm testing with different software, right? And SaaS tools to sort of streamline, rudimentary, tasks or social management, right? There's a ton of those out there. But, I want to make sure that at the end of the day, still focusing on the content as the product and keeping my attention and everyone else's attention there. And then everything else, promotion and things like that, finding ways to kind of make it streamlined in a way, because manual promotion and stuff can take a lot of time. But you want to do it right if you're going to kind of streamline it more. You don't want to just send out random stuff, but finding the pockets in which what takes the most time out of the promotion side of things, or what takes the most time out of creating a social calendar. And so finding those pockets and trying to reduce the time required as much as possible, and then maximizing the value of the content.
Well, I'd be very curious to hear how your scaling efforts go, and how you end up scaling out these sites that you have right now. It doesn't sound like we'll hear about 27 in your portfolio, but nonetheless, 9 is a lofty number to kind of manage and grow. But clearly, you have the chops to do it and whatnot. Thanks for coming by the podcast. It's so fun to have someone like you as a guest who's been a listener for a while and kind of taken so much of the information that this podcast, but obviously so many other sources have provided. But I mean, just look again at what you've run with, almost this kind of 10-year, I guess we're coming up on 10 years now, where from your first website and your first, search online for how to make money online kind of thing to where we're at now. And it's great. You've sold some sites, you've built up some sites, you've left your job for this. You're now traveling all over and fully immersing yourselves in your sites. So congratulations again. And yeah, thanks for coming by the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
That's been great. All right. Well, we'll talk soon. Have a good one.
Thanks.